Photoshop quick tips. I want to give you a brief introduction to adjustment layers. Let's go. Adjustment layers. So the way to think about adjustment layers is whenever you need to make an adjustment, and what this means is, if you want to change the color, the brightness, the saturation, any combination of things to the whole image or a portion of the image, you're going to start thinking about adjustment layers. So to start, in your layers panel here, you'll see this circle icon with half of it's kind of filled in dark. Anyway, this is your menu for all your adjustment layers. You can go through here and see that you have a lot of options. You can do levels and curves, brightness, a lot of things that you'd be familiar with if you have used Adobe Lightroom, and some other things like invert. Just a wide variety. So for the sake of this tutorial, we're going to add just a brightness and contrast adjustment layer. So you can see I got this window here. This is the properties for this selected adjustment layer. So you need to remember that the order of your layers is really important, and an adjustment layer will do different things depending on where it is in your layer stack. So I'm going to apply an adjustment here. Just add some brightness and contrast so you can see what the adjustment layer is doing. So if I toggle this on and off by clicking this little eyeball here, you can see that the adjustment is applied to the entire image, right? And I prepared this file ahead of time. I have two layers here to demonstrate some things. I'm just going to go through those layers. I'll turn off the adjustment layer and just show you what these are. So this top layer, you can see there's a mask on it. If I just control click that, you can see the mask is around this clock here, which is at Philadelphia's 30th Street station. And if I turn the background layer off, you can see, yep, it's just the clock here, and this layer is on top of basically the background layer. So if I turn this off, you can't really see much of a difference because there's a clock in the background layer too. So anyway, let's go back to this adjustment layer. And let's look at what happens when I move the adjustment layer below this masked out layer with the clock. So you can see the clock got darker. And why is that? That's because this brightness and contrast layer, which is increasing brightness and contrast, is now only affecting all the layers below it. So any layer on top isn't going to be affected by this adjustment. So that's one thing to keep in mind when using adjustment layers. The other thing is, if I move this back to the top, you can clip an adjustment layer to a single layer. So remember, if it's unclipped, if it's just kind of the base adjustment layer, it'll apply to everything below it. Doesn't matter if you have 100 layers below it, it will apply to all of those. Now, if I click this little button here, which is the clipping tool, you can see it's a box with an arrow coming down. You'll see that it creates this little arrow, which shows that it's clipped to the layer directly below it. And what it does is it only applies to this layer. So now you can see the clock is bright and the background is dark. If I toggle this, the adjustment is only being applied to the clock. So you have to keep in mind those two principles of adjustment layers. And finally, you can see that the adjustment layer comes with a mask. We've already gone over masks, so you should know the basics of this. Basically, if you paint black, it will hide that layer. If you have white, it'll show the layer. So you can see this is all white here. So the entire adjustment is showing in the image. Of course, it's not showing in the entire image because it's clipped, but you can also start to control where this brightness is showing by painting on the mask. So if I grab a black brush, and I will just make it a soft black brush, I can start to paint, and you can see now this is getting darker because I'm masking out this adjustment layer. So now this brightness is not applying where the blackness is. So if I shift click on that, I can see the before and after. You can see it's just getting darker. I use masks on my adjustment layers pretty often in my process just to get fine control over what is being adjusted in the image. So between using the mask and also clipping it to a layer that's already masked, you can have a lot of control in Photoshop.